Well, when I was very young, about 10, 11, uh, a friend of mine, I was walking down the street in my hometown and I saw a frame of arrowheads in an antique shop window. And I went in to see if they were for sale for some reason. I don't know why. And the man said, no, but I'll take you out if you've got a couple hours, you can find your own. And he did. And those were the days when you could speak to strangers and do such things. So we drove out a couple of miles outside of Camden, South Carolina, and I found 6 arrowheads and 2 pieces of pottery. And that was it. I was 11 and I was hooked. I had been on a job in the Southeast. I finally got a job when I was 17 on an archaeological dig. They said, can you draw skeletons? And I said, of course. And I sat down for nights trying to practice looking at, anatomy books, trying to figure it out. And I got the job. And then kept doing jobs like that in the Southeast, in Georgia, South Carolina. And then somebody called up and said, how would you like to work in Yucatan? And I said, wow, I'd love it. I've heard all about the Maya. And he said, can you come down in 2 weeks and stay for 3 years? And by that time I was married and had 1 child who was 2. And I said, sure. I gave notice to my job, and we went down there, spoke no Spanish, spoke no Maya. And my boss down there took me out to this archaeological site with all these huge rubble mounds and about 70 or 75 Maya working on them on scaffolding and everything, and said, now you'll be in charge for the next few weeks because we're going to Tahiti on vacation. And I said, okay. So, I went down and got a dictionary, Spanish, and I wrote out phrases. No, not a grammar, a dictionary. So the grammar was terrible. But I wrote out things like, stop digging here until Dr. Andrews gets back, or no, you can't borrow 400 pesos until payday, things like this. And made it through those weeks and learned a lot of Spanish and a lot of Maya. And then I got 2 workers to work with me in making a map of the site of Zibel Chaltun, and they only spoke Maya. So I had to learn Maya instead of Spanish. So that was it for a year, 2 years, 3 years. I was fluent in Maya when we left, and sort of fluent in Spanish. As Cesar Saenz, the old Mexican archaeologist, once told me when I asked him that question, he said, the latest one. And that's true, because it's hard to compare them. I remember at Zibel Chaltun looking through the woods and coming upon a great stone altar in the shape of a frog, and nobody had ever seen it before. And I thought, wow, I'm looking at it. I'm the first one to see this thing maybe in 1,000 years. And that was amazing. And then also there was, royal tombs at, Rio Azul. I was the first one lowered down into one. And it gave me a whole feeling. Here I was seated on a floor that hadn't been trod upon in 1,200 years, 1,300 years. And next to me was the body of a person wrapped in cloth. And I thought, what am I doing here? I'm no better than this guy. Why should I be interfering with this? And that changed my mind about a lot of things. But then I looked around and there was the famous chocolate pot on its edge, had fallen over in an earthquake or something. And so I drew the stuff and got out fast. But that was a great discovery, but it made one think about all these people that have come and gone, what they did, and you're just a little teeny speck on the plot of time and space. They're all my favorites, but I guess if I had to pick one, it would be Palenque, Chiapas, Mexico. It was, there was written the entire history of research, almost, of the Maya, and at least the early stuff. And the buildings are just so appealing, and the setting there between the coastal plain of Tabasco and the mountains of the highlands of Chiapas. It's just incredible. I first saw it from the air in 1965, and before there were any roads into it or anything like that. And we landed a little dirt strip and walked into the ruins, and it was just incredible, just unbelievable. Walking through a doorway and thinking, John Lloyd Stevens was here in 1839, 40, so-and-so was here in 1891, and here I am. What the heck am I doing here, you know? There are lots and lots of them. The one time we ran out of gas in a Huey helicopter over the border between Guatemala and Belize. We got lost in a rainstorm. We were trying to find an archaeological site. So I went down and borrowed a Huey helicopter from the Guatemalan Air Force and 2 pilots. And it turned out to be a fully armed camouflage helicopter. Guatemala at the time was at war with Belize, at least on paper. And we got lost on the way to Huachactun. We were trying to get up there or to Rio Azul or somewhere. Rio Azul, I guess, up in the really northeast corner of Guatemala, where Mexico, Belize, and Guatemala come together. So we crossed over, and I could see these little houses and boxwood plants and things, and I said, this is not the Petén. This is Belize, I think. I said, if you go down and let's ask directions, there's 2 guys on a bicycle. So we landed, and everybody came running out of their houses with machetes. So we took off again. So we get into Mexico, and I spotted the border, a sort of a cut through the woods, the international border, and looked up, and at that moment the dashboard lit up, and the man said, we're out of gas. And I said, wow, what do I do now? And the guy with me who'd seen this sort of thing before said, hit the floor so in case the gearbox explodes. So I did, and yeah, that was, we landed safely. We cut down a lot of trees with the rotors, but we landed, and then we had to set up all the machine guns because they thought there were rebels in the area, and but there weren't. And we passed a night and without water or anything much, but at least we were alive. And they had a radio, so they sent a helicopter looking for us. First thing the helicopter that came looking for us did was drop axes, and all these axes were whirling through the air toward us, so we had to run then, and came back and got the axes and cut down trees so it could land. And then they dropped big bags of peach juice. I don't know why, but we drank some of that, and then the helicopter landed, and they rescued us, and it was really an amazing thing. But there were a lot of close calls like that. My son, the oldest son, happened at the same time to be communications officer on the U.S. aircraft carrier Kennedy, and they were out in the Caribbean, and somebody came running in, he said, and said, your dad's in the traffic again. And so apparently the British had been notified about a helicopter, Guatemalan, number 120, crossing the border. And they had gotten all the Harrier jets together and sent them out to shoot us down. And that's when we ran out of gas, so it was kind of lucky. And so, you know, there were times like that.